Angelica, have you ever been obsessed with someone romantically or had someone obsess over you?
In all of my life or my young life?
Just your whole life.
Um, my first boyfriend dumped me when we got to college and I became a little bit obsessed with that. And then I had a really long, long crush that started when I was 6. And that lasted, I don't know, until 2 years ago when I found him on Twitter, I think, Matthew Miller.
It's amazing to me that you found someone named Matthew Miller.
I know. I kind of knew a little bit about him through like our families growing up in the same town. I fell in love with him when he brought the Footloose record to show and tell, and the teacher played it. My first grade teacher was Susie Q, by the way, and she was amazing. And she played Footloose, and he was so great. And he had this beautiful blonde bowl cut, and he looked like Nicholas from Eight is Enough, and turned out to be a really smart kid. Went to Yale, played football, got a couple graduate degrees, became a poet. And now I think he is a poet and is a published poet and also teaches high school English, which I think is perfect.
Sounds like you let a really good fish there wriggle through your fingers.
Totally. I totally did. And I was like, I wonder what Matthew Miller's up to. And I found him a couple years ago and I actually connected with him and we shared a couple of stories about kids we went to school with. And now I'm openly talking about how I had a crush on him on a podcast. And one of my friends tried to out me when we were playing jump rope when I was a kid. And I think I cried for 2 hours. So there you go. What about you? Any obsessions?
Not directed towards me, no, that I'm aware of. I had very thick glasses and I was a little socially awkward when I was a teenager. And so then when I shed the glasses and got contacts, I got my first girlfriend and I was super duper obsessive and like always wanted to be around her. And it was just a bit much. And she broke up with me. And then I had a really hard time letting go of her. And so I was kind of obsessed with her for a while. But as you grow up, you recognize these behaviors and I don't think I'm like that anymore, but I've been married my wife and I have been together for 24 years. So not long after that, I met her. So it's hard for me to say. I will say though, that when it comes to obsession, I have a tendency to obsess over new friends in weird ways. Like I'll meet people, they're cool, like guys or whatever. And I just am excited. Hey, this is a neat person. We have a lot in common. And then I feel like I come on too strong and they don't
to love you.
Of course, everyone wants love.
Yes.
And I have a lot to offer. I have a lot of whatever it is. And sometimes I think I come on too strong. We just met and I'm giving them advice or I'm asking them to go do something. And I feel like
we
sometimes
all do that as adults because making adult friends is very difficult. It's like dating and you want to be compatible. And so you just never know. Oh, they reached out to me last time to do something. Maybe I should reach back out, and not too many times. It's just
totally
like dating.
And also like I think with guys, there's this whole thing where you have to pretend to be cool.
Yeah.
Like you can't be too excited because it's not cool to be excited about anything.
Yeah. No,
and I
totally
have never
that.
been cool.
I think you and I had very similar like adolescent years, and we need to talk about this. We need to explore this more at some point. But I was pretty dorky. I spent all my time worried about my boobs coming in and just did not even have the courage to develop crushes in high school. I couldn't deal with it. When we would go to school dances, I would run into the bathroom when slow songs came on because I didn't want to be standing up against the wall without anyone asking me to dance. So I'd like hide. I would like, oh, I'm going to the payphone or I'm going to the bathroom. And then I fell in love when I was a senior after I went through puberty finally. And that was the person who dumped me. And it was you just couldn't move on after that.
Sure.
And I think it's because we spent all these years like looking for that love and then boom, it's over and you never think you're going to recover.
And it is weird because both of our mustaches came in at the same time.
It's true. It's true. Welcome to Film Swap, the podcast where we challenge each other to watch the movies that we've let slip through the cracks or purposely shoved into the cracks for whatever reasons. I'm Angelica Thornton.
And I'm Nick Vole. And this week we have an 80s classic, Better Off Dead.
Does it ever feel like everyone's got more going than you do?
Oops.
That everyone is smart.
So you're Al Myers' kid?
Yes, I am.
You look pretty stupid to me.
Thank you. You say the best skier in town just ran off with your girlfriend? Even your younger brother does better than you do? And that nobody even cares?
Beth broke up with me.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, you might be right. But remember one thing.
I haven't even been to New York City.
Nobody was ever better off dead.
The truth is, I could outski you any day of the week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you want a race? I'll take you on any day, sucker.
Go that way, really fast. If something gets in your way, turn.
All you need is guts.
All right, now turn.
I'm gonna race, I'm gonna lose, and I'm gonna die, in that order.
Go.
And you'll never doubt yourself again.
He's skiing on one ski.
Better off dead.
That's a real shame when folks be throwing away a perfectly good white boy like that.
An abnormal look at a normal teenager.
Okay, so this is the Rotten Tomatoes summary of Better Off Dead. Lane Meyer is a teen with a peculiar family and a bizarre fixation with his girlfriend, Beth. When Beth dumps Lane, he decides to kill himself, making bumbling attempts at suicide. Outside of his morbid endeavors, Lane spends his time with his oddball buddy, Charles, and befriends Monique, a visiting French student. Eventually, Lane resolves to race Beth's obnoxious new beau on the ski slopes with unexpected results. So this got a 77% tomato meter score and an 87% audience score. This is obviously a teen comedy that came out in the 80s. 1985. Lane is played by John Cusack, who was 19 when this came out. And I picked it for you, Nick, because it's just an 80s classic that, you know, I watched a lot in college, actually, in the early 90s. And I tried to watch it several times during the pandemic with my kids. And it wasn't streamable. And there were articles about how you could not stream it. You had to order it actually order the DVD Blu-ray on Amazon. And now you can finally stream it. Why had you not seen it before?
I think part of it was because it came out in 85 and I was 7. So I would not have seen it originally. I didn't have cable as a kid. So that's a big part of it. You know, the only movies I saw were on broadcast television or the VHS collection my parents, you know, we slowly built up. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a big reason why not. And then as I got older, I didn't really want to watch teen movies in my 20s and 30s and 40s now. So I hadn't seen it, although I really like John Cusack. So I'm a little surprised I hadn't seen it because I have seen almost, maybe not some of his latter day direct to video type ones, but I've seen most of his prime era movies. So I guess that's why. I also, you know, I sort of sometimes reject 80s teen movies. It just seems like there was a lot of them and they just didn't really appeal to me, I guess.
Yeah, they are formulaic a little bit. And you and I, you know, we've talked about, just the agony of being a teenager. Do you want to bring yourself back into that environment?
Totally.
I actually have a problem with a lot of modern teen comedies because of that, because I find that I don't know if they're not meaner, because the stuff in the 80s was brutal, but and maybe because I'm old, maybe it's just that simple. I just don't want to watch it anymore. I don't want to watch kids being mean to each other and kids just going through that turmoil.
Yeah, because you absolutely feel in that moment like you felt when you were 15 and some chick was being rude to you.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. Yeah.
So
did you have a regular bully when you were?
Did I have a bully? I have a good bully story. So there was a kid in 8th grade and his name was Howard Schur. And he was in a couple of my classes. And it was the day we got our yearbooks. And I was coming around the corner by myself with my yearbook in my hand. And he was talking to a bunch of his buddies. And I overheard them. They didn't know I was there. And he's like, "Did you see Angie Thornton's picture?" And they all started laughing. And he's like, "Have you ever seen such an ugly yearbook picture?" And it was pretty bad. I had braces. I was just a tool. And I was like, the blood ran out of my body, mortified. And I saw him a little bit the next year. And then I moved to a different part of Massachusetts and I didn't see him again. And here I am, freshman year at Emerson College, sitting in the orientation circle. And I'm not really paying attention. And we're going around and talking about, where are you from? What's your major? And I hear, "I'm Howard Schur from Concord, Massachusetts, and I'm majoring in film." And I looked up, and again, I was my 8th grade bully is in my orientation group at college. And he was like a short, pudgy kid, and he had stretched out, and he's over 6 feet tall. And they got to me, and I said, "I'm Angelica Thornton," and Howard Shore was my bully in 8th grade. And he looked up at me, and he's like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Angie. I went to 8th grade with you. In 9th grade, I was in Mr. Miller's social studies class." And he apologized to me after our little orientation group, and we lived in the same dorm, and we became friends. And he was the nicest adult, the nicest college student. So, I mean, like, he made up for it, but it was the worst person to, see at your orientation group.
But that's like the best, resolution possible. You confronted him.
Oh,
and he was contrite, and
yes,
that's the best possible resolution.
I was so glad he went first, and that I had about 15 minutes until they got to me, because I just went back and forth. I'm like, do I want to say anything to him? But I was just like, I was kind of boiling, and I was like, my name is Angie Thornton. Howard Shore was my bully. And he was like embarrassed and confused. And then we talked, and he's like, oh, it was just an idiot kid, blah, blah, blah. Turned out to be a good guy. So,
well, I've only punched 3 people in the face, and all 3 of them were bullies in middle school. And the one that really stands out to me was this kid, Greg Ingelgau, who he keeps popping up on Facebook, like, be friends with this guy. I'm like, that is the worst person I've ever met. He tormented me a lot in middle school. And towards the end of 8th grade, we were at Gresham High School doing like the incoming freshman orientation. And he sat behind me. And do you know what gleeking is?
no.
Gleeking is when you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth and you spit out of your mouth directly from your salivary glands.
Yeah. That goes really fast. Yeah.
He was doing it on the back of my head in the middle of this thing. And they had given us this lecture beforehand that if we made any sort of disruptions, we were going to get in huge trouble. And after about 10 minutes of this, I just turned around in the middle of the presentation and punched him directly in the face. And nothing happened to me. And then the next week, I'm walking down the hallway, and he sneaks up behind me and punches me in the back, which is, pretty brave thing to do. And I was wearing a big billowy jacket, and his fist actually didn't even hit me, because he aimed for the back of the jacket, but it was 4 inches off me. So he didn't even punch me. And he said, that was for last week. And then I knew I had him, because, like, he didn't confront me face to face ever again. Yeah. Anyway.
Do you know what he's doing now as an adult? Did he turn out well like Howie?
No, he's a piece of crap. He's not a good guy.
Oh,
all I know is that he likes to hunt. And I have nothing against hunting, but that's what's on his Facebook profile picture.
Right.
And I know who he remains friends with, and he's not a great guy.
Yeah.
At least
so
from what I
need
can
to
tell.
hide that suggested request on Facebook.
For sure. And you and I have I won't get into who it is, but you and I have a multiple acquaintance who went to high school with me. And she is friends with all of these people. She just doesn't discriminate against any of the people we went to high school with. And it blows me away that, like, I don't know. She's much more magnanimous than I am.
Interesting.
I'll tell you later.
That's an offline conversation.
That's an offline. Sure. So I derailed us here. What were you about to say?
No, what did you think of Better Off Dead?
So I will never want to watch it again. I didn't hate it, but it is very teenagery, and it is also tonally confused, I think, because you mesh up the hilarious concept of teen suicide with slapstick, wacky, dream sequences and animations out of nowhere. Yeah, so it's a difficult movie for me. I think I can see why, if you watched it as a younger person, though, you would be into it. And, you and I recorded a version of this podcast last week, and we had a technical issue. So now we're re-recording, and I've been thinking about it a lot since. And it actually makes more sense to me in retrospect when I look at it from the perspective of this film was made from sort of the perspective of a teenager, where you don't always have a firm grasp on reality. You feel like the entire world is against you because you're so insecure. So when, one of the best running gags in that movie is all these guys saying, hey, I heard you broke up with so-and-so, can I see her? And I feel like that's one of the funniest gags that goes on throughout the film. And it also kind of speaks to this idea that the whole world is against you when you're a teenager, and this is how you view everything.
Yeah, good point. Because I think his teacher was included in that, like his boss at work. It was ridiculous. It's all the stuff that's flying around, ludicrous stuff that's flying around in Lane Meyer's head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I guess when I watched it initially, I took too many things sort of literally. And then obviously I am smart enough to understand that some of these things are meant to be flights of
Right.
fancy, but I feel like they're less incongruous and they also make a lot more sense when you look at it from his warped perspective of this is how the world is. Everyone's against me.
Yeah, it's only Lane's perspective, and that's why his mom is such a weirdo and
Mm-hmm.
everything is just so exaggerated.
Yeah, and because his mom, when I originally watched the movie, I thought his mother is mentally challenged. I made notes while I watched this. Mother, mentally challenged. Like her character is so idiotic. But
Yeah,
I
it does
guess,
not make sense when you first watch it at all.
yeah, at all. And the father is so straight laced and stern and disapproving. But when you look at it from a teenager's perspective, that is kind of almost how you view your parents. Like these people just don't get it. You know, you don't understand their perspective at all, so they seem almost one-dimensional to you or two-dimensional to you. They
I'm
don't
kind of going through that right now with my 13-year-old. Actually, I just had a conversation with my husband last night because my 10-year-old said, "Oh, Soren doesn't like you. He thinks you're mean, but he thinks Dad is cool this week." Like there's no rhyme or reason to it. He just thinks everything I say. I could ask him the exact same question as my husband, and the response is so different.
mm-hmm.
And that's how kids are. That's how Lane Myers was.
Yeah, and that's sort of like this path to self-discovery we have as an adult where you're able to have remove and you can see your place in the world and
Yeah.
hopefully, and you can sort of see other people's perspectives, because when you're a teenager you don't see why maybe your mom does things you don't understand, or your
Right.
dad is maybe, or this is falling into traditional gender stereotypes, I
course.
realize, but your father might be stern because he sees that you do need a little bit of discipline. You do need to get through high school to get on with the rest of your life, and
Yeah.
you don't want to do the things you have to do, or that like the girl you're dating, this is just high school. You're going to date lots of girls. Let it go. And
Yeah.
it's easier said than done, obviously, but
Interesting. I love to hear how your thoughts changed over a week now that you've had a little bit more time to think about it. So
yeah.
people did not love this movie when it came out. I was 11 years old and I don't actually think I watched it either when it came out. I did watch it a little later in high school and then watched it a lot in college. This is something that I read in thestranger.com. When it was released, Better Off Dead got shit reviews and bombed at the box office. Famously, Cusack walked out of a screening of the movie upset that the final product didn't reflect the dark or surreal nature of the script. In an interview, director Savage Steve Holland said that the film's regular screenings on HBO and popularity with video store dirtbags propelled it to beloved cult classic status. And in 2013, in a Reddit, Ask Me Anything on Reddit, Cusack dispelled rumors that he still hates the film. He said, "I just thought it could have been better, but I think that about almost all of my films. I have nothing against the film. Glad people still love it." So I think he wanted it to be a little bit more philosophical and serious. Not sure that would have worked because you are talking about teen suicide. So maybe he's just sort of come around after all of these years. I like this movie because of the nostalgia. I think you said you could see how people would like this movie. It came out in the 80s. I like the absurdity of the movie. I liked all the flights of fancy that you were talking about. The claymation was great with Van Halen. I love the classroom scene in the math class where everyone was a math professor and he just sucked. Like that scene just took you right back to your brain as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old.
Yeah, when every other kid seemed to know the answer in math class and you didn't. Yeah.
Exactly. It's definitely dated. We've talked a little bit about these 80s films being like misogynistic and, racist. There are all these tropes in there. But I don't know. I thought it was still so kooky, so off the wall that I still think it holds up in ways that other films that way don't. And I also think that the fantasy of it all makes it okay.
Yeah, I agree in that the tone, although it is weird, does support almost anything that you want to get away with. So like, for example, the Asian characters, the guys in the car who learned English from listening to Howard Cosell. I mean, that is kind of funny. I mean, like a teenager of any sort talking exactly like Howard Cosell is funny, but then you do get into these regressive stereotypes about Asians in there. And so I don't know how
Yeah,
you
of
tell
course.
this absurd joke that is kind of funny, but do it in a way that isn't racist.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely right on the line for sure. Um, what did you think? I mean, we've kind of talked about how this movie's like throwing a bunch of stuff in a bag and shaking it, and that's
mhm.
the movie. What else did you think didn't work besides the fact that it was, I guess, not connected in the best way?
What didn't work?
Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, honestly, I think the only thing that really didn't work is just the tone to me. That just
Yeah.
took me a really long time to understand. And even though I understand it now, I still do not want to rewatch this movie.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never come back to it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say I hated it or something because I didn't. So, I mean, that's really the long and short of it. It's just, it's hard to take it seriously at any point. It's hard to invest in the characters because I think it wants to have it both ways. It wants to be this sort of outrageous comedy, but it also wants you to care about Lane and what he's going through. And it's hard when he's, you know, breaking out into claymation, like you mentioned, or he's becoming Victor von Frankenstein at some point. And
Or when he's pulling the cheerleader's outfit off in the middle of the cafeteria, and you're like, oh, come
yeah,
on, really?
and he's not, I mean, ultimately that redeemable. He's not particularly nice to
Yeah.
anybody in the movie. You know, you're supposed to feel sorry for him, but he doesn't present as a sympathetic character, or even to me, even a complex character in that,
Yeah.
you know, some character, you know, everybody's a ball of conflict, right? We all have good things and negative things. But I think mostly what we focus on in this movie is his own narcissism and selfishness. But again, from the perspective of him, that makes sense. The world does
Yes.
revolve around me. I am the main character in my own life. I just don't know how, as a viewer, how that invites you into his world.
And I wonder if we would have the same feelings, or I would have the same feelings about this movie and so many of its fans, if it wasn't John Cusack, that like really charming, endearing John Cusack that we love so much. I'm trying to imagine like any other 80s actor trying to pull it off. Like you said, he wasn't really nice to people. I mean, but I still thought Lane Meyer was lovable.
Mm-hmm.
But that might be the John Cusack thing.
Yeah, I wonder if you saw this before you had seen him in anything else, if you would have felt the same way. If you hadn't seen him
Yeah.
in Say Anything or any of his other later films.
That's true. I like Lloyd Dobler was probably seeping into my brain as I was watching it, because I'm pretty sure I saw Saying Anything first.
And Lloyd Dobler from Say Anything is a pretty similar character in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, except they, you know, I don't love Cameron Crowe movies generally, but I think that is his best movie. And I think that he does take steps to make Lloyd Dobler relatable and likable. And
Yeah.
how much carryover does that have if you see Better Off Dead, thinking, well, he's more or less the same character? Because he is more or less the same character.
Yeah, just a little bit more evolved, a little older, and without all the, kooky scenes, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
I,
yeah.
John Cusack is so good at making us fall in love with him, though. I mean, like almost every role he plays. What was his name in Gross Point Blank?
Martin Blank.
Martin Blank, that's right. So good in that. Even in Hot Tub Time Machine,
Yeah.
he was great in that. And every time he's in one of these movies and playing one of these roles, I just the movie ends and I'm like, oh, I have a crush on John Cusack again. A
Mhm.
renewed crush on John Cusack. He's just really good at it.
Yeah, he seems like somebody you'd want to hang out with.
Yeah.
You know, I saw a thing about Bill Murray lately and how he's kind of a jerk in real life, but he's so
Really?
beloved. Well, there's various stories
'Cause
about
I've
him
done,
being.
he's my favorite, right? And I've
I
done
do.
so much digging because I just don't want it to be true. And I've heard lots of urban legends about how cool he is to real people. I even met someone who used to work at the Hollywood Theater in Portland who said he was the greatest guy he's ever met. But then I hear these rumblings and I'm like, please don't be true.
Well, people that he works with is the difference. I think he wants to be loved, but what I'm getting at is I read something somebody else said that said basically, yeah, he's an asshole, but he's our asshole. And I feel like John Cusack, if he was in your friend group, I don't know about real John Cusack, but I mean the characters he plays,
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, like he's a jerk, but at least he's our jerk. We
Yes.
understand him. We know what's in his
Yes, totally.
heart.
I
And
can
I
see
think
that with Bill
that
Murray too.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the other characters. Charles. So he's like a 40-year-old. I mean, like, what was that? What,
Well, I mean, Curtis Armstrong has looked exactly the same every day of his life.
I want to
You
see
know,
newborn pictures of Curtis Armstrong with that beard.
5
His
o'clock
mom's just
shadow.
cradling him and he's like making cocaine jokes, all swaddled up.
So many cocaine jokes.
It's crazy.
Like,
But like,
this is
did he
supposed to
say
be a teen
cocaine?
movie.
Did he
And
say cocaine?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did he ever actually say cocaine though?
No, of course. That's how they get around. I mean, he snorted Jello, which was pretty funny. But then he snorted snow. And I just wonder, are kids getting this? I mean, kids understand, right? But
Yeah.
it's just a very strange thing to put in a teen movie to joke about. I guess it's the 80s and it's the height of Coke culture, but still, it just seemed very odd.
I also think we were way more badass as teenagers in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I was born in 74, so I was in high school in 88. I just think we did things that kids now would never do.
Fight Club.
I mean, we partied a lot starting freshman year in high school, at least where I'm from, we did. And I don't hear that now. I think kids are relatively well behaved. They have more distractions at home and they're like sitting there on their phones talking to each other rather than dragging kegs into the woods and doing stupid shit that's going to get them killed, which is what we used to do.
I went to exactly one drinking party in high school.
Wow. Okay.
Well, at Gresham High School, I was very nerdy. Well, I was always very nerdy, but at Gresham High School, I was especially nerdy. And then I transferred to Portland Lutheran High School, which is a small religious high school. I'm not religious, but my parents thought I would get better grades. Haha, stuck it to them. I didn't. But there was one party before my senior year at Greg Coleman's house where everybody went and got drunk. And I brought my neighbor and he and I sat there as the only sober people and then left because we were too intimidated to do anything.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the only, so I don't relate to that at all. I didn't drink my first beer till I was a freshman in college. I was watching, I tell you
Wow.
exactly, it was a Weinhardt's Private Reserve. I was in my friend's parents' basement watching The Shawshank Redemption on VHS.
That is such a sophisticated first drink story.
I'm
I
a
think I had
sophisticated
like
person.
a 2 liter of Purple Haze and I was 14 in someone's like rec room.
What is Purple Haze?
I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. It's like in a soda bottle. It tastes like grape soda. It's probably got malt. And it's just, and I probably threw it up. Yeah, I'm Googling it to see if it actually still exists. Yeah, we had a lot of parties. I mean, there was like parties at the Pines, parties at the Point, and I had a very small class in high school. It was 143 kids.
About the same as mine.
Sort of everyone was always invited. I mean, you didn't necessarily feel cool walking in, but it wasn't like you were turned away. And they were outside in the woods or on the beach. And it was just, I didn't party a ton and I didn't drink a ton, but I went to a lot of drinking parties and we got chased by police a lot.
Sounds like a fun childhood. You're not going to get in too much trouble as long as you don't drink while you're driving.
Oh, Purple Haze still exists. That's what I'm getting you for Christmas.
Great.
Oh, God,
can you order malt liquor over the internet? Because I certainly don't think they sell it in Portland, Oregon.
I will drive. I'll drive wherever I have to drive to get this. No, it's disgusting. But little girls love it. That sounds horrible.
Young drinkers.
Let's give them beginner drinkers, neophytes. Yes, if you will.
Sure. They don't have the sophisticated palate of you and I.
I prefer Pinot now.
Drinking our Thunderbird.
Okay, where were we?
I don't know.
Are we talking about this movie?
Are we even talking about this movie anymore?
All right. So, okay, you probably wouldn't recommend Better Off Dead to other people.
I think I would. I think I would. I think I would recommend it to teenagers just because I think they will relate. I think I would recommend it to people who are really nostalgic about the 80s. And I think we both know a lot of those people. I'm not one of those people, but people are.
Oh, I love that. I loved watching like the scenes through their bedrooms and you see all the stuff you used to have. And I also really like the skiing part of it.
Mm.
So because I grew up skiing, and skiing in high school was super social. It was like going roller skating. And so, these like challenges on the mountain and having a crush and then skiing with that person. My first date with my husband was actually skiing. So that part of the movie was, albeit ridiculous, because you don't dance on skis with your girlfriend, but it was kind of fun to watch that.
See, you keep saying, we talked about this before. You said, ooh, keep the hat on, Bull. You keep saying dancing. I just thought they were doing tricks. Like, I didn't know that was what they were trying to do.
I mean, it was, if you don't ski, that was just as preposterous as like some of the crazy things that he was imagining, like the dream sequences and that's not how you ski. You would wipe out and get a concussion. They didn't wear helmets back then. It was stupid. I mean, it was obviously stunt people like skiing under each other's legs and stuff. No one, that's not possible.
You and Bill didn't do that on your first date?
No, it's not like roller skating backwards and one person has their hands in the back pockets, and it's not that easy.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I've only been skiing once. I mean, I grew up in South Dakota till I was 10, where there is no skiing. And then my parents weren't skiers, so I never went skiing here. And it is weird because at Gresham High School, we had a ski team. I don't remember it being particularly cool, although I'm sure lots of the cool kids did it, but wasn't like a thing that you were jealous because you weren't a part of or anything like that.
No, it was where I grew up. I wasn't a great skier because I kind of started skiing later, but I skied in high school, not great. And then when I moved to Montana after college, I started skiing by myself all the time to get better. And then I met my husband, and we started skiing together, and he grew up a ski racer. So he's really good and fast. And I would try to keep up with him, just like in the movie, just like Monique and Lane. And the one time I was like, I can do this. I can go down these moguls and keep up with him. I crashed badly, got whiplash, had to be checked out by a doctor. So that was the end of our ski dancing.
Yeah. And he was going down on one ski from the Black Diamond from the top of the.
That's right. I actually have ripped, my binding came off my ski, and I did have to ski on one ski. I did not look like Lane. It was a disaster.
I went on the training hill one time, and I was there for 3 hours, and I finally started to get it at the end, but I just was done.
It's really hard. And up until about 10 years ago, I used to tell adult friends, you should do it. I'll go with you. You'll get better and you'll love it. Now I'm like, no, we're way too old. You're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Don't even bother.
Don't start when you're young and learn how.
You got to start when you're young. I mean, you can't really start in your 40s. It's just, it's expensive, and it's not worth it.
So as far as recommendations go, yes, I would recommend this movie to somebody with a caveat of know what you're getting into.
It's an experience.
Yeah. Life is an experience.
Okay. So what are we watching next week?
Well, I'm very excited to challenge you on this one because it is one of my very favorite movies. One of my, you have your desert island movies. This would be a desert island movie for me. It is the second of the Cornetto trilogy, Hot Fuzz. The first of the trilogy being Shaun of the Dead, the third being The World's End. This is the second film. It's probably my favorite of the three. It is a loving homage to action films. It is a very funny movie, and it is a movie that increases in value the more times you watch it.
Interesting. I have seen Shaun of the Dead, and I loved it, so I'm excited to see this.
Yeah, I think you're going to like it a lot. I look forward to hearing what you have to say about it. And if you're listening to this or watching this, watch it and, participate with us. You can get a hold of us on Twitter or, however these things happen. I'd love to hear what other people think about it too, because I feel like it is a very accessible movie, especially if you've seen action movies. But even if you haven't, it's funny enough to stand on its own.
Nice. All right. Well, you can watch Better Off Dead streaming on Showtime, and it's pretty much available everywhere else for a couple bucks right now.
Yeah, for sure. Don't spend more than a couple bucks on it. Film Swap is produced and hosted by Angelica Thornton and Nick Vole. You can watch or listen on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Follow Angelica on Twitter at Angelica KATU and follow Nick at Nick Vole. Share your thoughts on the films we discussed there, and we might just read them on the show. Music by John Michael Farley and Nick Vole.